Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today, we're taking a look at Meridian Empire in Space, a brand new accessible 4X game that's available on Kickstarter right now. And in this video, in this preview, I'm going to do my very best to describe to you what you're doing throughout the course of this game and why you should be interested in it. Along with that, I'm also going to highlight a bit of the theme, the flavor text, and some of the mechanical elements that make this a more accessible 4X counterpart to a lot of those heavier, bigger brothers. That being said, let's go ahead and swing into this video. So the three things that I want you to pay attention to in Meridian Empire in Space, the three things that if you're a 4X player you should be compelled by, are first going to be the endgame triggers, or the way that the endgame is actually driven in this. It's going to be driven by either colonizing all of the available planets and moons. It's going to be driven by potentially having control or a control point in each one of our sectors here. I think that's the right term. Each region has its own terminology. Or it's going to be triggered when the group as a whole decides that the game, should wrap up. Let's say someone has to run, or you only wanted to play a 60-minute game and you've put a hard stop on that timetable. At that point, you'll spawn these victory points, or these little victory modules, and trigger the last round of the game, which for me, I think is a really interesting way to drive endgame. You'll either spawn them here all around these middle sectors if someone has some sort of control in each one of these branching triangles, and then everyone will have one round to fight and squabble and take over these points or these modules, knocking the other player out of their control points. Or if it has been triggered by either endgame or by the amount of planets and moons that are colonized, you'll distribute these equally, and then they'll tactically be placed down in a variety of different locations here on the board, driving everyone to fight in that final round and establishing who is able to squabble for or gain the most control. So even if endgame has been triggered, but you've spent your reservoirs building up a big military base, you've positioned yourself tactically correctly, and your opponent is, on their back foot or has overexerted themselves in order to drive endgame, there's still a solid chance on that final round you and maybe some of your companions could work together to go ahead and finish this off. Now, why is endgame important in this game? Well, endgame sets the precedent for everything else you're doing. This is a 4X game. You are colonizing, you are exploring, you're exploiting, you're doing everything that you should do in this, epic space galactic battle. But it's all simplified into those core principles. Establish control in various different regions and sectors. Drive for victory points, which is territory control or how much domination you're able to have on the map. Fight and create alliances with other players. Work together to knock someone out of their leading position, or work together to hopefully betray your friend and score that final victory point in order to drive endgame. And it does all of that in a simplified way, meaning that the total gameplay time is somewhere from 45 to 60 minutes if everyone's playing efficiently. Now, of course, it can go longer with higher player counts, but this really, really shines at a 3 to 4 player 4X experience, and it's because of what you're doing as you're driving towards those endgame victory conditions. Now, let's talk about the core game as a whole. Everything you see in front of me is going to be what you're going to be going after. Planets with their own resource generation are going to be dotted throughout the different sectors. Moons are all going to be able to take one colony, and those are all going to start generating you one resource as well, which are going to be these over here, which is going to be your energy. We're going to have two different types of ships that can be taken over, can be captured by your opponents if you decide not to self-destruct them when you're engaged in a battle, and you'll be slowly moving across this main map board. You'll be colonizing regions, you'll be exploiting those regions for energy, you'll be generating that energy to develop new colonies, which are going to be your markers that contribute to fighting and defending and also maneuvering around the board to establish more control. And you're going to be converting this energy also into ships and colonies that then start producing more for you, giving you more tactical advantage over the board and allowing you to position yourself across these regions. Now, of course, in any sector or any region, you're going to be able to work together as a team to fight your opponents or defend against an allied force, and that kind of simplified nature of a 4X cooperation really, really shines. You're also going to have a series of events. Events are going to trigger random happenings on the planets when you go and defeat or take someone off of their territory. something like planetary economics. Meridian's economy is thrown into chaos by the constant back and forth of planetary control. Plus, planets cost half as much energy to acquire this round. Everything else, ships, colonies, and charges, cost twice as much to produce. So you're able to take everything over a little bit easier, but if you want to go ahead and produce ships or maneuver this round, it's going to cost you a little bit more because trade networks and everything has been disrupted by the chaos here in space. And I find each one of these events adds a bit of flavor and a bit of theme, and it makes sense when they integrate into the gameplay because they're doing so directly after you've decided to conquer another planet. And that has implications. You've disrupted something, you've changed something, you've shifted the hierarchy or, messed up trade routes. And so it really has an impact here on the game. But again, that's what you're playing with. It looks simple because it is. This is a game that highlights and focuses on that higher level 4X experience without getting you bogged down in details or powers or kind of all the stuff that makes a great 4X game extend to 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. Now, the other thing I want to mention, one of the coolest things about this game system is going to be the economy or the energy that you're using to do everything that I just described. And we'll get to flavor text and establish the theme of this right after we talk about this energy. So there's going to be two different types of energy. You're going to have your energy tokens, which are going to be renewable resources. These are going to be things that you acquire from conquering and holding planets or expanding your galactic control. And then you're going to have these little one-use like burst energy tokens. The way this is going to work is you can always generate and pay to get more of these, giving yourself a stockpile of available energy, allowing you to cross the map or fight to the death or really defend a planet when the time comes. But these are going to be your key. These are going to be your renewable energy every single turn. And as you take over planets, for instance, New Earth over here is going to cost you a total of 6 to conquer, but if you use your renewable energy to do so, it's going to start generating you 3 at the top. And at the start of each one of your turns, this energy here is going to be renewed, whereas these little pips of energy will be disposed of the moment you use them. So you can hold on to these as a backup, and then here, you're going to be playing your cost, flipping all of these tokens over as you use and expend your energy to take your turn, getting more of these tokens by conquering planets, placing them in front of your board exhausted, and then instead of losing what you just spent on conquering a location, you'll flip them all back over, and at the top of your turn, you'll have everything that you just generated this round to utilize again. This creates a expanding economy. It creates value and gives you a reason to continue reaching and grabbing for control. It not only does that, but it escalates the nature of the game. As you and others are gaining and producing more energy, you're able to do more. You're able to maneuver and conquest and spread your control. You're able to hopefully stockpile enough resources to really challenge those endgame victory conditions. This becomes a really interesting puzzle. And like I've said a few times, it's not complicated, but it really does work very well to give you that sense of a 4X game here on the table. Now, I told you I'd swing into the flavor text, and that's because there's an interesting little thematic story and puzzle here, which I actually enjoy quite a lot. And then we'll swing into some of the things that I wish I would see more in this. Now, this is a indie publisher. I'm working with a prototype, and so my hope is that this system succeeds well enough that they're able to continue diving into it with expansions and modules and continue expanding upon this accessible little 4X game. Because I think it really does some things that are very, very cool. And like I said, I like the story so far. I want to see that come through more and more. The story. For years, humans had existed on Earth using energy from Sol, their nearest star, to flourish and build extensive civilizations. In the 22nd century, explorers from Earth detected a previously unknown system, Meridian. Some brave souls decided to assemble an expedition leaving Earth to colonize this newfound mystery. Early colonies reported incredible findings in the Meridian star system, a seemingly impossible number of habitable planets rich with resources. As society started to settle, the united forces of Earth planned a second, more involved excursion to the Meridian. However, before this excursion could depart, all contact with Meridian suddenly disappeared and the star vanished from the sky. Centuries passed until, spurred by desperation in the face of a dwindling Earth, the remaining inhabitants of Sol launched competing expeditions in a desperation into the abandoned Meridian system. But the remaining hope of the human race is faced with an unpleasant surprise. The planets around Meridian are still inhabited. Two main factions have risen and all but eliminated each other in interplanetary conflict. Now 4 futile empires are grappling for survival in a struggle for system-wide control. So there you have it. We are the disparate factions, the lost remnants of human exploration that have established territory and succumbed to, well, our worst instincts. We are fighting in order to prolong the human race and establish some degree of control here in the stars. So, that's Meridian, Empires in Space. What are some of the things I'd love to see more? Well, I'd love to see more and more of these event cards as we play. I would also love to see another 1 or 2 expanded modules giving us variations in ships and how we interact. And of course, I'd love this to be a modular game system where the planets and the type of resources and bonuses that they give you shift every time you play. Now, I'm working with a prototype here, and so some of those things may or may not be in store. Swing over to the Kickstarter page to take a look at it to see if those things are currently active or if they're things that the designer has talked about or is considering doing down the road. For now, though, Meridian Empires in Space is really, honestly, a aggressively accessible 4X puzzle and presents something in the genre that I really like. For me, this will be easier to get off the shelf than any of its bigger brothers, and so I would highly recommend, if you have a group that enjoys a quick 4X experience, if you want something that lets you feel like you're dealing with interplanetary conflict without having the kind of overwhelming nature of the puzzle always bearing down on you, Meridian is one you really should check out. Not only is it doing something unique in this space and presents a really fun game experience with a good degree of strategic and collaborative control, but also you're going to be helping out a indie publisher, someone who I'm, well, passionate about. I like my indies, but you're going to be helping make something come to life for the first time ever, which for me is very exciting. So if you made it to this point, leave a comment down below. Are you excited about it, compelled by it? Do you have any questions? Would you like to see a gameplay here on the channel? I'm not opposed to doing it if enough of you are intrigued or interested. Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. We'll see you next time. Thank you.